Everyone at the wedding was whispering about him. The billionaire. Not because of his money or his company, but because he was sitting totally alone, in a wheelchair. And what a single mom did next. It shut everyone up. Stick with me, because this story isn't about rich people doing rich things. It's about two people who were both, in completely different ways, invisible to the world. It's about Elias Thorne, the guy who had everything, and Maya, the woman who was just trying to keep everything together. And it all went down at a wedding where, honestly, neither of them wanted to be. The grand ballroom of the Ashford Hotel was blinding. It was one of those weddings where the flowers probably cost more than Maya's car. Maya was tucked away near the kitchen, wiping down a champagne flute. She was tired. The kind of bone-deep tired that comes from working 3 jobs and negotiating with a 5-year-old about broccoli. She was just doing a side gig tonight, helping the catering company. She needed the money for her daughter Lily's school field trip. She wasn't supposed to be part of the party. She was part of the machinery, invisible. And then there was Elias. He was the reason this wedding was taking place in this ridiculous venue. He was the groom's best friend and a major business backer. He sat at a table pushed slightly out of the main dance floor area. A table clearly reserved for people who were important, but maybe not fun. He was wearing a custom-made suit that probably cost more than Maya made in a year, and he looked like a statue. Cold perfect and completely untouched. Elias had been in a wheelchair for 2 years, ever since a helicopter incident that the media had dissected for months. Before that, he was a legend. The guy who closed deals on the ski slopes and flew his own jets. Now he was just the wheelchair guy. He could hear the whispers. Poor guy. Such a tragedy. He was so handsome, too. The problem was simple. In a room full of joy and connection, Elias was completely isolated by his past and his present reality. And Maya was isolated by her economic reality. They were worlds apart, yet both were alone in the crowd. The dinner service ended and the dancing began. Maya was on a break, having managed to sneak a single bread roll and a small glass of water. She watched Elias. He hadn't moved much. People approached his table, but their conversations were short. They'd lean in, say something too loud, pat his shoulder awkwardly, and then retreat back to the noise. It was the pity that got to Elias more than the pain. He missed being seen as Elias, not as an obstacle or a cautionary tale. His table, around for 8, was empty now. A few distant relatives of the bride had been seated there for dinner, but they'd moved on to a livelier group. Elias was trying to look interested in his phone, but he was really just watching the couples dance. His own fiancée had left him 6 months after the accident. The truth was, the world didn't know how to deal with a damaged king. Maya watched a young waiter stumble near Elias's table. The waiter, clearly nervous about serving a man of Elias's stature, fumbled a tray. Nothing spilled on Elias, but the sound of the metal hitting the carpet was loud. The waiter's face went scarlet. Elias didn't get mad. He just looked at the waiter and said softly, "It happens." But the waiter was already apologizing, practically bowing. The whole incident made Maya sigh. She hated how people turned the rich and powerful into untouchable aliens. Elias was just a guy. A guy who probably just wanted to relax for 5 minutes without someone panicking around him. Maya's break was nearly over. She passed his table on her way back to the kitchen, carrying a stack of dirty plates. The music was a terrible pop song that made her want to plug her ears. She stopped just for a second. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the bread roll that made her feel brave. Elias looked up. His eyes were a startling shade of green. They held a kind of weary intelligence. "Excuse me," Maya said. Her voice was just normal. Not quiet, not loud. Elias raised an eyebrow slightly. He probably thought she was going to ask for a job or a donation. "Yes? You're Elias Thorne, right? The business guy." "That's me," he replied, a hint of dry amusement in his tone. Maya shifted the heavy plates in her hands. The plates were an easy shield. She looked at his empty table, then at the dance floor, then back at him. Her stomach twisted, but she needed to say it before she lost her nerve. It wasn't about him being rich. It was about her own problem. A co-worker, another single mum named Sarah, was trying to set Maya up with the groom's uncle, a balding, loud man who kept winking at her from across the room. Maya would rather do another 5 hours of washing dishes than sit next to that guy. "Look," she started, leaning in a little so he could hear her over the bad music. This is probably a really weird question. I'm Maya, I'm working tonight. But, I have this problem. This guy keeps trying to get me to sit with him, and I really don't want to. I need a distraction. I need a shield. Elias just stared at her, not reacting. So, she finished, taking a deep breath and rushing the words out, will you be my date for the next half hour? Just so I can sit down and drink my water in peace and no one bothers me? Silence hung between them. The pop song seemed to get louder. Then a faint smile, so tiny it barely moved his lips, appeared on Elias's face. It was the first honest human reaction she'd seen from him all night. You want to use the billionaire in the wheelchair as a shield from an unwanted suitor, he said. It wasn't a question. I know it's a terrible idea, Maya said, but you look like you need a break from the pity parade, and I need a break from the uncle parade. Elias gave a short, quiet laugh. It sounded rusty, like an unused machine starting up. It's the most honest offer I've had all evening. Fine, sit down, Maya. Maya put her stack of plates down on a nearby side table. She pulled up the empty chair next to him, and for the first time all night she truly sat down. She didn't adjust her apron or apologize for her clothes. She just sat. The first 5 minutes were a bit strange. The whispers immediately shifted. The new narrative was, the serving girl is trying to trap him. Maya could feel the eyes, but she didn't care. She was sitting down and the uncle had backed off. Mission accomplished, Elias watched her. So you're not going to ask me how the accident happened? Maya took a slow sip of her water. Nope. I'm sure you've already had to tell that story 50 times tonight. If you want to talk about it, you can. But I'd rather talk about something else, like, what was the absolute worst wedding song you've ever heard? Elias blinked, genuinely surprised. That's a fascinating question. He paused, thinking deeply. There was one where the groom's brother sang a 10-minute-long power ballad he wrote himself. That was pretty rough. Maya giggled. A real honest giggle. Oh, that's terrible. Mine was a wedding where the DJ only played sea shanties for a full hour. And just like that, the conversation started flowing. They weren't talking about billions or wheelchairs or catering bills. They were talking about the ridiculousness of life. Maya talked about the challenges of trying to explain to Lily why Mommy couldn't just buy her the newest video game. She talked about the joy of seeing Lily ace a spelling test. She talked about how exhausting it was to keep a house running on pure grit. She didn't mince words or try to make her life sound better than it was. Elias, in turn, opened up slowly. He talked about how hard it was to run a company when everyone looked at him like he was fragile. He confessed that the hardest part of the injury wasn't the physical pain, but the loss of freedom. The spontaneous trips, the long hikes. He admitted that he didn't miss the money or the jets. He missed being able to stand in his kitchen and make a cup of tea without needing to carefully plan the route. He talked about the quiet frustration of watching others pity him when all he wanted was to be treated as a capable adult. They treat me like I'm broken, he said, his voice low, and I hate it. I hate the soft voices and the gentle hands. I just want someone to hand me a glass of water without acting like they're performing a surgery. Maya reached over and picked up the water carafe from the table. She poured him a fresh glass and didn't spill a drop. She didn't look at his chair. She looked at his face. Here you go, Elias, fresh water. He looked at the glass, then at her. Thank you, he said. It was more than a simple thank you. It was a recognition. They spent the next hour like this, two souls exchanging secrets in the middle of a loud, self-obsessed party. Elias wasn't trying to impress her with his power, and Maya wasn't trying to get anything from him. They were just two people who were tired of putting on a show for the rest of the world. A small group of Elias's business associates approached the table, led by a man named Richard, who had a face like a dried plum and a smirk that suggested he knew everything. Richard was always trying to get in on Elias's company, hoping the accident had made Elias weak enough to manipulate. Elias, old boy. Richard boomed far too loud. He didn't even glance at Maya, still hiding in the corner. I see you found a little company. Don't let the staff distract you, my friend. We've got millions to talk about. Richard leaned in conspiratorially toward Elias. Look, I know things are tougher now. Maybe you should consider selling off that logistics division. It's probably too much trouble to manage from, your current situation. He gestured vaguely at the wheelchair, then smirked, clearly thinking he was being clever. Elias's jaw tightened. He was used to this subtle attack, the way people used his chair as a weapon against his competence. He was about to give a cold, polite refusal, the kind that froze people in their tracks. But before he could, Maya spoke up. She didn't raise her voice, but the tone she used was the same firm, non-negotiable voice she used when Lily tried to sneak a third cookie. "Excuse me," she said, looking straight at Richard. "The logistics division is one of the most profitable and streamlined operations in the sector. It has a reported annual growth of 18.5% over the last 3 years, largely due to the software overhaul Mr. Thorne implemented himself before his own situation. Unless you have a better idea than sell the most valuable asset because the CEO is sitting down, I suggest you come back when you have a better pitch." Richard's mouth actually dropped open. He stammered, "Who are you?" "The waiter." Maya didn't flinch. "I'm his date," she said, meeting his gaze. "And I'm pretty sure he's done talking about work for tonight." Richard, utterly deflated and unable to process being schooled by a woman in an apron, backed away awkwardly, muttering an apology. The other associates followed, their eyes wide. Elias was staring at Maya again, but this time there was no weariness in his eyes. Only a fierce, almost shocked delight. "Wow," he breathed out. "That was brilliant. And how do you know all of that?" Maya shrugged, a blush creeping up her neck. "I listen to a lot of business podcasts while I'm driving between jobs, and I Google things. Your company is interesting. Also, I hate condescending people." "So do I," Elias said, a genuine, full smile finally breaking through. He lifted his hand slowly and tapped his index finger twice on the tabletop between them. It was a gesture of respect, of thanks, of "I see you." The music changed to a slow song. The lights dimmed. Most people went back to the dance floor. "You know," Elias said, leaning forward, "my driver is waiting outside. I was planning on leaving about an hour ago, but I'm enjoying this more than I thought I would. It's strange. I came here for a wedding, but I feel like I'm having the first real conversation I've had in months." Maya smiled back. Her tiredness had momentarily lifted. "Me too. For a while there, I forgot I have to wake up in 5 hours and pack Lily's lunch. Would you want to risk a dance with the billionaire in the wheelchair?" Elias asked, only half joking. "I think I'd rather not," Maya admitted honestly. "I'm terrible at slow dancing. I usually end up stepping on people's feet. But I can stay and talk a little longer." He nodded, completely accepting her refusal without pressure. That too was a relief. They talked about dreams. Maya's dream was small, concrete, to save up enough money to buy a used food truck and sell her grandmother's amazing tamales. Elias's dream was more abstract, to be able to walk through a crowded room and not have every single person pause their conversation. "You're going to get that food truck," Elias said, nodding seriously. "And you're going to be great at it. Tamales are a national treasure. And you're going to get what you want too," Maya said. "People will stop seeing the chair when you stop letting them. That sound crazy?" "No," Elias said, looking around the room filled with superficial chatter. "It sounds like the truest thing anyone has said to me all year." The night went on. Maya took another short break, but instead of going to the kitchen, she came back to Elias's table with a small, slightly squashed chocolate cupcake she'd managed to hide in her apron pocket. "A reward for saving me from the uncle," she said, splitting it in half and handing him one of the halves. They ate the cheap wedding cake in silence, both comfortable with the quiet. It was a moment of true, unscripted connection. Elias looked at the crumbs on his hand, then at Maya, her face relaxed and genuinely happy. He realized he was seeing the real version of her, the hard-working, funny, sharp woman, not the caterer. And she was seeing him, the guy who loved bad wedding songs and hated being pitied. Not the CEO. Elias had been surrounded by people who wanted to elevate him back to his old status, or people who wanted to tear him down because of his new one. Maya was the only one who had just seen him at eye level. He thought about the vastness of his life, the companies, the homes, the accounts. He thought about the small, contained world of Maya, the school lunches, the shift work, the tamale dream. The difference was huge, but the loneliness they shared was the same. His was a loneliness of untouchable power. Hers was a loneliness of unseen struggle. "I could help you with the food truck," Elias said, carefully wiping a crumb from his lip. "Not as a donation, as a business investment. You have a great product idea and the drive to do it. I have the capital to set up the seed funding and the legal team to handle the paperwork." Maya stopped chewing. She looked at him suspiciously. Why? Because you were nice to me, he said simply. And you treated me like a person. And you have a great business mind. You're trying to achieve something real. That's an investment I'm happy to make. I'm not giving you charity, so I am backing a good bet. Maya shook her head, though her eyes were glistening. I can't. It's too much. It feels wrong. Why? Because I asked you to be my date to get rid of a creepy uncle. It feels like I'm taking advantage. Elias smiled. You are not. You gave me a gift tonight. You gave me a moment of real human interaction. My life is full of people who want something, and people who pity me. You just wanted a seat at the table and a little peace and quiet. You were direct. You were honest. That's worth more to me than you can possibly know. He took out his phone, not the one he was faking interest in before, but a different one. He pulled up his company's legal contact page. Take this email. It's my personal assistant. You email her the Tamale idea and your business plan. If you don't have a plan, write one. I'll have my team work on the legal setup and the funding. If you don't do it, I'll assume you don't think your tamales are good enough. And I think they are. He was challenging her now, and Maya appreciated that. He wasn't giving her a handout. He was giving her a high-stakes opportunity. Okay, she whispered, taking a picture of the contact information. Okay, Elias, I'll do it. But you have to promise me something. What's that? You have to be my first customer. Deal, he said, holding out his hand. Maya shook it, a firm, businesslike handshake. The first spark of something more than friendship, maybe even romance, flickered between them. A connection built on mutual respect and shared honesty, not status or pity. The end of the night was drawing near. Maya had to go back to clean up, but as she stood to leave, Elias stopped her. Maya, he said. He looked serious. The uncle is gone. The night is over. But if I'm being honest, I don't want the date to end. I know I'm asking for a lot, and this is completely out of my zone, but I don't want to go back to the quiet. I'd like to see you again. Not for business, for... He paused, searching for the right simple word. For a chat. A real chat, maybe at a quiet coffee shop. When you're not wearing an apron and I'm not in a tuxedo. Maya looked down at her apron, then back at his earnest face. This was it, the crossing of the lines. She was a single mom who was tired and scraped by. He was a man whose shoes probably cost more than her rent. But he was also the man who listened to her story and treated her like a person tonight. He saw the fire in her, not just the fatigue. Yes, Elias, she said, her voice soft but sure. I'd like that very much. Elias watched her walk away, and for the first time in 2 years, the world didn't feel heavy. It felt hopeful. He realized that the greatest barrier in his life wasn't his wheelchair. It was the wall he'd built around his heart, letting in only pity and business deals. Maya, the single mum working 3 jobs, had somehow found a crack in that wall and pushed her way in, not with pity, but with a simple, practical request. Will you be my date? She'd seen the man, not the tragedy. She'd seen the opportunity for 2 lonely people to connect, and in doing so, she had given him back a piece of the world he thought he'd lost forever. The truth is, sometimes the people you need the most are the ones who don't even know your name yet. They're the ones brave enough to ask the strange question that changes everything. Don't forget to subscribe to Soul Stories' Chanel for more beautiful stories that will touch your heart.